If you're tired of not making progress and you're ready to be the artist you know you're meant to be, you're in the right place. You're listening to the Singer's Path podcast. The Path, or Performing Artists Training Hub, will cover everything, including singing tips that actually work, advice from top industry professionals, and life-changing mindset shifts. Out with the starving artist and in with the thriving artist. I'm your host, Sarah Bishop, professional singer, actor, educator, and entrepreneur. I'm not afraid to speak the truth and stop the gatekeeping of quality information so you can actually become the artist you dream of being. So let's get on the path, shall we? Even though we're all on our own journeys, it always helps to have a guide. Hello. Welcome back to the Singer's Path podcast. I'm Sarah, I'm your host, and we are only one day away from the very exciting summer event, BELT Like a Baddie. And because we're in celebration of this really fun, free live event that I'll be doing literally tomorrow, we're doing a belting themed podcast episode. And this is actually part 2 of To Belt or Not to Belt. And in this episode, we're going to be breaking down where belt is found culturally, how much it has informed our music, contemporary music, American music, and then how a lot of folks mind F themselves with it, okay? And again, I'm not going to be going in as much detail as I will be tomorrow at the event, so if you're listening to this, you haven't signed up yet, make sure that you go and you register for BELT Like a Baddie. All of the information is down below. I'll probably talk about it more at the end of the episode, but let's continue with part 2. How influential has belt music been on our current landscape? So we talked last week about how belting at its purest form is actually a very natural thing to do and is found a lot in history, from tribes to African tribes to even Celtic tribes, right? There was even something called keening in the Gaelic tribe, which is really just crying and expressing the sound of grief so that families can grieve and cry with the sound. So there's a lot of ties instinctively and at the root of all things to belting. So if you've been convinced that you can't do it, that's not true, because we've instinctively learned how to do it as a way to communicate and to literally survive and to express for many thousands of years. So at the core of it, belting in itself is actually something that is very natural. Now, the catch is mixed belting, which is really what a lot of contemporary music requires, is a bit different. Like, belting is at the core of it, or how it was originally used, was a lot lower in the voice. So this is where like the discrepancies and definitions and where people kind of start to get mind-effed, is because the older way of belting, which we can see in musical theater, like even like the 1950s era, where we have Ethel Merman, right? When did it kind of start showing up in that sphere? It was a different way of amplifying sound when there was no sound amplification available in the studio beyond like the soprano cut or the classical cut, the singer's formant cut, right? So it's a different acoustical way. But think about the music and how it was written back then. In that more old school version of chest belt, those songs did not go above a C5, okay, ever. If you look at those songs, right, they did not do that. And so if we're looking at more of a classical, more traditional lens of teaching music, right? If we think about what the vocal training was back then, was also classical based. So no one would belt above a C, because they literally would be screaming, because they wouldn't be able to blow that much air and have that much TA engagement. Okay. So at the core of it, even if you Google it right now, you'll see that the definition of belting is, it literally says pulling chest voice up in the voice, right? That's what people think belting is, especially from a classical lens. And so if you are doing that, you're gonna cap out, right? And a lot of people do that because they're taking their training of their classical training of having a lot of air, and they don't have the right breath pressure. They're not able to thin out, and they're really just kind of yelling their way up to a certain point. And that people got away with that for a long time, right? But then as more contemporary music started to develop, right? And obviously there's always influences in all kinds of music in American history. I kind of briefly mentioned that, right? We can find belting in country, bluegrass, soul, R&B, pop, rock. I mean, obviously musical theater, I just talked about it. But the core of it, this crying call, at the heart of it, not only is chest dominant, but comes from the emotion of crying, the emotion of expressing something very big. And it started to translate into all genres of music. And then somewhere along the way, music started getting higher. It was being written higher. And I think some of this has to do with pop music was starting to get higher. Like people that were naturally good mixers that didn't have classical training were coming in and singing pop music that was kind of high. And it isn't the same approach that you would have with classical technique. You would not sing things like that with classical technique. So then those people, those artists, even if it was country rock, whatever, were kind of looked down a little bit on the classical community for a long time as not being trained singers. But lo and behold, their natural inkling to do this other coordination, which is inherently mixing, was getting them to make this belt sound higher in their voice. And again, belt is so prevalent in all styles, but after you pass a certain threshold, you don't just belt, you need to mix belt. And that becomes a way more nuanced, difficult coordination. And that's what people don't understand, is that in order to belt sustainably and not have it sound like you're screaming, you have to look at it through a different lens, and you have to also learn to mix, because if you're not doing that, you're gonna scream and it's gonna hurt, and your ingredients are gonna be out of alignment, that we kind of talked about in that last episode. There's similar ingredients, right? There's air, there's space, there's TA engagement versus CT engagement, right? There's physical things we have control over, but then there's different amounts and different like micro adjustments that need to happen that actually differentiate the sound, right? And in this class, we're going to talk about those differences. And what I keep talking about over and over and over again in other episodes and in my content, I talk about this all the time. Your easiest, most straightforward approach, and again, this will be discussed in the 3 action steps we're going to talk about in the class tomorrow, but your first job, because this sounds like a lot, right? But your first job as a singer is just to get familiar with what is your baseline mix. Because if you do that, if you develop vocal balance, which that's what it is just the baseline of good technique, and you're developing that, you can add belt then to anything. You can then switch the ingredients up to a little bit chest dominant, right? You can increase the depth of the vocal fold, and then, then that color will match the moments where you belt. Or say you want to do a classical piece, then you could turn that up and add that head dominant color. And that's what I keep talking about all the time. That is actually the first thing. That is like the most important thing that a singer can do. We want to get to the end of the finish line. We want to go, I want to belt, I want to belt, I want to belt. And again, I've said this before, but it's like you get a taste of the exciting thing, right? It's like you maybe ran a 5K and then you go, well, I think I'll run a marathon. That sounds good to me, with no training, right? With no steps to do that more difficult thing. And that's where the lack of transparency is. And that's what I'm trying to clear for you today, of what are some things that are making it a little harder for you. One of which being that we do not, well, I think people do now, but when I was growing up, there was not enough emphasis on mix, how mix is actually just the foundation of good vocal technique, and that how belt isn't really everything. It is an emotional choice that we make, that we add to flavor our song, but the higher the song, we're gonna have to mix belt anyway. And also, even if we had a lower song, say we're doing a more classic musical theater thing, you're doing 8-0 Annie or something, you can't even belt the entirety of that because it's exhausting, okay? So belt is a very exciting, delicious flavor that can be found in all kinds of music because it represents something emotional and something important and a human need to express. However, it needs to be earned. And we need to we lined up to do it, right? And that chest dominant mix opening to it, right? We need to be conditioned to do it because it's a little bit extreme, especially if we're doing chest dominant mix, we're doing mix belting, Okay. The higher you go in your voice, you need to be conditioned to do it. Okay. And I know you're like, well, Sarah, you told me that that was a very natural thing to do. Mixing, belting was a very natural thing to do. It is a natural thing to do. Unless, you want to sing it 8 times a week on an alphabet score and sing it high into your voice. I can almost guarantee you, if I got a lot of you as babies and we didn't have any agenda and you're just learning to sing, right, at 13 or 14, and I taught you to mix without you even knowing about it, and then we're like, okay, we're going to belt. You would do it more naturally. You would be out of your own way. It's the entangling of all of these stories and definitions and muscle memory and, neural signals you have and about all of these things, or you put things on a pedestal. And when we scrape it all down, what is the foundation? It's vocal balance. Then we add on top of it. And it's actually funny because almost the less education people have, like, where did this mixed belt, this high stuff come from? Well, it came from people they're just instinctively kind of doing what they're doing, right? Without attachment. They're just making sound from emotion, right? That's where it came up from. Right. And so not that I ever want to, discourage anyone from getting good singing technique from a classical background or anything. That's not the case. But it's the mind fuckery that goes on between the two, that the disconnect that, like, okay, classical training is just all there is to be. And not realizing that this contemporary way of singing also has its own technique as well, but can also come naturally if we don't think about it too much. So then I have to take everybody that has all the classical technique, unmind fuck them to strip things back, get them just to focus on muscle memory, condition them just to balance again, and then they're able to make the pivot into that high mix belting, right? And again, I could take anyone off of the street and get them to belt in 5 seconds. In fact, I'm going to be taking people on this call tomorrow and getting them to belt. I might even get some of them to mix belt depending on where they are in their training, right? But that doesn't mean, right, unless they are completely surrendered and they're conditioned into doing mixed belting all the time, or they're really naturally good at it, right? To be able to do it 8 times a week is a different story. So I guess all things to say, like, both are true, right? Like, belting at its core is instinctive. It is natural. It is something that we have a right to express. And you have to untangle all of these stories around it. And some of those stories have to do with some of the classical training you've gotten. And is it true that the classical training can help do it sustainably? Yeah. Is it true that some of the classical training is going to mindfuck you? Yeah. Is it true that some people can roll out of bed and mix belt and have no vocal training whatsoever because they don't have attachment to anything and they just kind of do it because they're going off instincts or whatever? Yeah. Right? Like, it's one of those things that it's like, if you can't inherently do it right off the bat, there's nothing wrong with you. The good news is we can condition it in, and you can do it. You just have to learn that conditioning. And the other good news is it is actually more natural than you might think. And so what is the action here? Okay. And we're going to be talking about this action at the end of the day. When you go to your voice teacher, hopefully you have a good one. And if not, I'll be making some exciting announcements tomorrow about a sale I'll be running. Very, very cool. If you don't have it, again, you're going to want to be at this class because you're going to get extra dibs and extra stuff. Anyway, I digress. But I've made conditioning programs to help you with this, because for the love of God, let's unmindfuck you and just get you fucking doing the task. So if you do have a good teacher, try as much as you can to turn off your brain and literally just do the physical function. Because at the end of the day, the 5K to the marathon thing is a great example. You really just need to condition it into your body and then let it the fuck go. That is most of the time what I see. And it kind of almost gets you back to that instinctive place. Okay, let's line it up physically, and then you can let it go and just express the way you want. But if you're determined to be right and fucking get in your head about it and be like, whoa, my classical training says it, you have to surrender that. You have to surrender it. You have to just accept that some of that stuff is going to be valuable and great. And along the course of it, you're going to have some epiphanies, or things are maybe not going to line up all the way, because here's the truth. Here's the fact of it. Singing is not one size fits all. There is not just one technique to it. Okay. It's about meeting yourself where you are and pivoting. It is about understanding balance. It is about understanding and switching based on what you need to sing. Now the switches aren't huge, but they're a little bit. They're these nuanced things that you need to be aware of in your body. And so if your teacher isn't capable of getting you there physically without you getting mind fucked to the sun, okay, that's why I've made these things. That's why Pillars exist. Pillars is all about vocal balance. It's about just getting you step one. Like, can you play all your notes? Is your chest voice strong? Is your head voice strong? Can you mix without a ton of flips and breaks? And here's the other thing. Like, this is what I mean. I was like, you're always going to have to pivot and follow yourself and move based off of what your body needs, because to have perfect vocal balance all the time also isn't really a thing, right? Like, I've been studying vocal balance for the last 5 years, intensely, not only in my own voice, but how to train people. And it's like vocal balance in a sense, like becoming a better and better singer is kind of like rich people problems. Like, yeah, when you have money, like, it's not like your problems go away, right? When you know vocal balance and you know how to belt and you know how to do these things, it's not like you never have any problems with your singing voice again. Like, you're still going to have to work on it. And it's just, you have better problems, right? So like, okay, I might get to vocal balance. I might be able to belt the shit out of a Celine song, and my jaw and tongue have something to say about it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like sometimes my air pressure is a little fucked up, right? Okay, you know, especially if you're moving back and forth between belting and head voice all the time, right? There's going to be negotiations that have to be made, right? There's more things to learn. You will never not have something to learn about your voice, because using your voice is using your body, which is alive, which is human. And our human bodies are always changing. So to expect yourself to have this like end goal, like, once this happens, I never have to study again, or I will understand all there is to know. I will also say the more you learn, you almost feel like the less you know, because it's so complicated and because of all of the things related to it. Anyway, I'm on a little bit of a tangent, but the point is if you're kind of hearing this and you're like, oh, I think I might need vocal balance or whatever, Pillars exist literally for that reason. Let's teach you to identify what your voice needs and give you the lesson plans to actually do it. And then Advanced Mix, which I may or may not be talking about in this class tomorrow. Let's be real. Okay, let's be real. Advanced Mix then teaches you how to move the dial, how to get the exciting sound you actually want, how to do it stylistically so it's appropriate, how to actually drill in chest dominant mix and head dominant mix. You don't even just get chest dominant mix and advanced mix, you get head dominant mix. So say you're a professional and you're like, hey, I just got called in for Elphaba this week, and next week I'm called in for Christine and Phantom. Okay, you want to sound like you're actually doing those appropriately, you're actually conditioning yourself to do both. Those are the lessons that are going to actually condition your body to do both, right? And they're the lessons that I have looked for my whole fucking life, if I'm so for real. Like, I've always had this desire of like, I really want to truly understand what makes this sound this and what makes this sound that, and how can I, as the instrumentalist, how can I, or let's say I'm a violin, right? How can I fiddle and play in the symphony? How can I do those things? How can I make my own music and make the sounds and the textures that I actually want to make? So Advanced Mix is very, very cool because it takes you, hopefully, from you already having established vocal balance technique. You can already get up and down, and if you can't, go do Pillars. But it takes you from that spot and it shows you, hey, like, we need to amp up this ingredient and this ingredient, and it's going to get us to do chest dominant mix and belt, right? Chest dominant mix and belt are not the same thing. But chest dominant mix needs to be present if you're going to belt, because it's going to be the thing that blends it all together and it doesn't sound like you're just popping into a random belt note, okay? So you could do a chest dominant mix song and not belt, but most of the time you're going to have moments of belt in those songs, right? Just think of like Defying Gravity as a chest dominant mix song where they have moments of belting, okay? And on the other end, you're also going to get head dominant mix. So this is going to help you. Again, I don't mean to minimize classical training, because at the end of the day, those people pay so much money. They spend years and years and years, right? So it's not going to ever provide you what your master's degree in vocal performance is going to do for you, okay? But head dominant mix is going to help you, especially if you tend to be a really belty singer, to learn how to sing those more classical colors, so that, and even in a like a revival sort of way. So say they're doing a revival of Carousel and you don't really want to sound like you're in an opera, but you want to sound like you're doing this is going to sound counterintuitive, but like a contemporary classical soprano. Okay. So if you want to do something like that, or you're a little insecure about that head voice and that sound, and you feel like you don't like it, and it sounds shrill, anytime you get asked for a golden age saying you don't want to do it, or say you want to do Light in the Piazza or something like that, that is the course that will build that head dominant mix, right? So we have vocal balance, pillars, middle of the ground. Chest dominant mix is an advanced mix, helps you with that chestier, more contemporary, leading to belt sound. Head dominant mix helps you do more of the golden age. It pivots you from vocal balance to the other side, a little bit thinner, a little bit headier, a little bit prettier. Okay, so again, when I made these, this was all about filling a gap. Why is it so fucking hard to understand the differences? And the truth actually comes down to the nuance and our language and our attachment to how things are. And I tell this to my students anytime I am working with someone. The best thing you can do for yourself is try to surrender to the exploration. If we're attached to our opera training and what our voice teacher told us that chest voice is dangerous, and yet we have a desire to sing Adele, that isn't going to serve us. So we have to let that go if we really want to belt, okay? The second thing, so you surrender to attachment. The second thing is that you have to understand that if the songs that you want to sing aren't just about being belted, right? They're actually higher because of how contemporary music is written. You have to understand that it's not just about belting, it's about mix belting, right? Which can inherently be a little more instinctive than you think, but we're going to have to build the right physical and neural pathways for you to be able to do that. An advanced mix will actually give you the training to get you physically to do that. Anyway, we're going to talk about all this in so much more detail tomorrow at the event, Belt Like a Baddie. If you haven't signed up already, I know it's only tomorrow and I was dragging my feet making this episode because it's just like a lot going on as, you know, we're getting ready for the event. But if you haven't signed up yet, why the fuck would you not, right? Okay, I know I mentioned last week that scholarships will be available. So you only have about 24 hours left to do this. But if you share any of my posts and tag me and the sign up link, that's really important to qualify so that other people can find it and sign up too. If you do that on socials, so you can do it on TikTok or on Instagram at Sing with Bish. If you do that, then you will hit the first step of qualifying for the scholarship. The second step for actually qualifying for the scholarship drawing, we're going to do like a Wheel of Fortune moment. We're going to put everybody's names in a wheel and then it'll select it for us. But the second step is that you have to come live. So we're going to be vetting people live on the call. Hey, like we saw your handle here. Like, are you here live? Because those are the only two requirements to be considered for that drawing. Okay. Now, if you can't come, I'm not going to hold it against you. You know what I mean? Like it's still going to be available to you. You can still sign up and you'll just have to do the replay and that's fine. You know, I just like to incentivize people to be on the call because I feel like that ends up being really valuable for people. You might even get to work with me because I'm going to be taking live volunteers. But if you're in Spain and it's 1 a.m, you know, okay, well, I'd rather you watch the class and have the replay. So the replay will be available 48 hours after the class. Everybody will get that. And I will be announcing some really cool, a really cool sale, maybe on something that I just talked about. So again, you're going to want to be there, and I'm really excited to connect with you as always. And if you like this episode, you know, I'll probably say this in the outro. I can never remember what I actually say in the outro. Please leave us a 5-star review. That helps us connect to people. And if you do leave that review, make sure that you screenshot it and email it to me at the email singerspath@gmail.com. Or is that right? Yeah, singerspath@gmail.com. Because that way I know it's you, and I'm also going to be doing a giveaway from those pool of people. Different from the giveaway for Belt Like a Baddie, but it's just to get people to review it, and like if you're really digging it, right, like why not? We would really appreciate it, and it really helps other people find it. So with all of that, I really hope to see you tomorrow at Belt Like a Baddie, and if not, I hope you watch the replay. All the sign-up information is in the show notes, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. This helps me get this information out to more artists all over the world. Let's work together to spread the joys of music. Until next time, I'm your host, Sarah Bishop. signing off from the Singer's Path podcast. Thanks for listening.